So welcome to join our session today on the Digital Food series. And today we talk about vertical farms and green infrastructure. My name is Tiffany Tsui. I'm the moderator of the Digital Food series. I'm a sustainability strategist, consultant, and entrepreneur. Normally, I wear also two hats. So one hat is the co-host of the Digital Food Network, and another hat is as managing partner at the Vertical Farm Institute. So today, one of the presenter is my colleague, Daniel Podmiserech. I will introduce him later. And today we talk about a topic which is I'm not partial. I'm of course that's part of my work, but I will still take on the role as moderator, and then together with Dick to together ask constructive, critical questions on this new concept, a new emerging industry. So a little introducing of the Digital Food team. On the team here are Dick Veerman, founder of Foodlog, and also Anushka Anand. She's the writer, researcher at Foodlog. We developed the concept of the Digital Food Network about 2 years ago in the middle of the COVID pandemic to focus on the theme of connecting. So connecting data, technology, and strategy, and connecting people, ideas, and regions. And today's topic is exactly that. It's connecting, let's say, the traditional agri-food world with the architecture and urban planning world. So that's something really crossing the silos. And the key question on our digital food platform is always about the key question of how to unlock the value of sustainability with data and digital transformation. So we'll talk about today then the new emerging field. Before we start, let's start with a poll question for our audience, Anushka. So the first question for our audience who are normally in the world of food systems, question is, do you know what the percentage of land area on Earth is suitable for agriculture production? Single choice. So we can let me use this time when I was thinking about the questions. Don't Google search. I will introduce Daniel Podmiserech. Daniel is an architect by training. He has a PhD on the contribution of vertical farming to energy efficiency of cities, which is in some ways counterintuitive because in the current lot of talk is, of course, vertical farming is associated with energy consumption. So Daniel, you spent your career on researching the relationship between architecture, urban planning, and food production. So what drives you? What's the main motivation?
Yeah, so first of all, hello, everybody, and warm greetings from Vienna, finally. Yeah, we have a winter's past, yeah, and perhaps this is one of the key connections to that, yeah. We will see it within my presentation, so there are a lot of reasons why we radically should think about in how to increase the food production in the city. And one, of course, is directly related in how we are treating the earth and how we are dealing with the land use on one side, and on the other side is all around the questions related to energy / to climate change.
So you just said that the drive to increase food in cities is main driver, but why is that? I mean, what is the answer to this question that I asked? What is the percentage on Earth actually suitable for agriculture production?
By the way, I participated to this poll. Yeah. Actually, we have 10% of the land use related to agricultural production.
Okay.
And there are two numbers. Yeah, one is what is the actual biocapacity of the earth, which will be around 30%, and 20% of that is the biocapacity for food production.
Okay, let's see if our audience are also knowledgeable about this. Anushka, let's see the result.
And we have them already. Wow. You're faster.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Some people think it's more than 50%. And yeah, most people got it right, 10 to 20%. So 10 to 20% sounds actually quite a lot, right, on the whole Earth. So that should be, in principle, enough for feeding us, not? So I think that's it sounds like you don't agree, apparently, that you don't think there is enough space. That's why we need to increase food production. So I invite you to start your first part of the presentation. Tell us why.
Okay. I would like to start, as you've heard from the introduction, my background is architecture, and it's very rare that new building typology is emerging. If you think about the last building typologies which got implemented, these ones have been the shopping mall in the 20th century and the airport. And we are totally convinced that the vertical farm, to what extent ever, will be the building typology of the 21st century. The Vertical Farm Institute is a multidisciplinary team. We got funded a month after my PhD. Perhaps the only thing what I want to say about the PhD is that it was around the question if whether vertical farming can increase the overall energy efficiency of cities, and my results have been an absolute disaster. But the good news have been that we also have seen why. So one of the key, also most interesting part of that work is that it requires a multidisciplinary team. Yeah, we are talking about plant physiologists, agroscientists, but also economists and architects, engineers, and whatnot. Yeah, because we somehow, from the very beginning, have to switch our perspective from buildings which are usable for people to buildings which are optimized for plant growth. We share the same goals like the UN. So everything what we are setting up in terms of our analysis or preparations or feasibility studies, the questions are always related to what extent we are actually heading for the same goals. Yeah, one of the key goals which are already directly related to the development of new building typologies, of course, have to do with clean energy, renewable energy, and there is a huge possibility also to transform that logic, if followed consequently, to sustainable cities and communities. So the three focal points actually we are working on are the questions is, and when it comes into CO2 emissions and embodied energies, to what extent actually already existing buildings offer the opportunity to be refurbished or to become food production entities. Yeah? And on the other side, we are trying to find the right answers to enlarge new let's say, or to reach the possibility, or to, how could I say that? Yeah, to combine vocational training with schools and coming up with new professions like the urban farmers or vertical farmer, or however you want to call it. Big goal, of course, is the development of new building typologies. We concluded a lot of research projects, basic research or R&D projects. One of the most important one, from my point of view, has been this one together with Siemens, because it's, again...
Daniel, do you want to share your screen, or because I think we're not seeing it?
This is a disaster, because I thought I'm sharing it already.
No, that we didn't see it. So go ahead.
What about now?
You can see your screen.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So missed the first slides. I'm pressing Control Elegant. Does it work again? Still?
Yes, it works. So
okay,
yeah, now it's
super.
fine. That's perfect.
Okay. So that was a vertical farm, 15,000 cubic meters for an urban development area in Vienna, together with Siemens. And the interest from Siemens' point of view was to what extent actually a vertical farm could contribute to the issue of the load distribution, which are intrinsic when it comes into renewable energy production. One of the biggest projects we are currently working on is also a huge urban development area of 100,000 square meters. And we are investigating on one specific building block to what extent actually vertical farming, rooftop farming, urban farming could be implemented in that. We are talking about 24,000 square meters gross floor area. Coming back to the question what Tiffany already addressed from the very beginning, which is also indirectly related to the poll question, is when it comes to the question of land use, we have to be very specific when it comes into proposals for cities or for specific countries, because everyone has a completely different footprint. And we try to translate this information in, for instance, how much food gets imported, and especially when we think about the whole year, and doing the analysis of the food supply chain, which normally is wrapped around the globe and only connected by transportation, and bring that together into a function and space program of a building, which we call the implosion of the whole food supply chain, which again creates a lot of positive externalities when it comes into CO2 emissions, but also with strengthening the sub-economic network. Yeah. In terms of parameters for the function and space program for new building typologies, of course, there is the client, which actually comes up with a specific function and space program. And we are then focusing on the food production. We normally differentiate it to food, which is photosynthetically active driven. So for instance, lettuces, tomatoes, strawberries, etc. Then protein deliverables like insects, fish, aquaculture or aquaponics, and mushroom production. And as a new topic, we are going into laboratories. The interesting part of that, or the reason why we are differentiating that, is because every food item, what you see listed here in the center, has very specific energy requirements. Of course, these ones who require most of the light, namely power, also through high efficient LEDs like tomatoes, make the energy demand, of course, increase. I always say, of course, you can produce tomatoes in the basement, but then you also have to pay 270 kilowatt hours per square meter a year. And last not least, all these things are intertwined and connected. So the question is, what by the end of the day, what is the energy performance? We are not using the term of energy efficiency. The energy performance is way more important because it covers the energy demand on one side, and on the other side also the renewable potential of cities. To conclude the overview of our activities, we recently produced a guide for the United Nations Development Program, which perhaps might be a big support in getting a deeper understanding, first of all, in what is actually vertical farming and how it's differentiated to urban greening projects, urban farming, etc., and what are the differences between potential business models which could be implemented. And we also differentiated a bit in terms of size, so SML, XL. What we concluded 2 years ago was a vocational training together with IPA Switchboard, Kilian Kleinschmidt, who worked for UNHCR for 25 years, where we worked together with Libyans in Tunis for war reasons and developed cultivation and production methods and combined them with business models that they were able to go back to Tripolis and started with their businesses. I'm very happy about that. That was a fantastic time. It was hard for me to leave Tunis again, But what makes me very happy, 2/3 of them already have their own company and they're producing herbs, lettuces in unfinished buildings or war ruins, and they are expanding in a pretty rapid way. So long story short, one of our headlines actually is that utopia is no longer an ideal, but it's reality potential to be tested, implemented, and developed. That was my introduction part.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. So thanks for the introduction. And then the last sheets you show is already quite a different view of vertical farming. Actually was used as a tool for education and cultivating young, let's say, entrepreneurship in war zone. So that's not a typical view associated with, let's say, the rich cities, US, where there currently a lot of investment going into. So that's actually really leading us to the second poll question, which I also like to ask Dick to contribute to the debate. Anushka, let's see the question. There's a perception or critic that vertical farming produces mostly salad greens. That's what's we normally see in the news. And therefore it has a little contribution to the big issues, which is also the topic we address in our digital food platform, which is relating to the large agro-food questions. So my question is, do you agree with this statement or you disagree? So Dick, I invite your comment on this topic as the seasoned agro-food expert. This topic of vertical farm is rather new, isn't it? Coming into the food system we know. So what is your take on this subject?
Well, should I reveal already what I voted?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Well, this time I voted neutral. Indeed, I happen to think like the German economist von Thunen, who said there is a ring of agricultural activity around a city. So very near to the city, you do the fattening and you have the greens growing, so the salads and everything, the vegetables you need to grow. But you cannot grow, obviously, wheat in a city. That would be very expensive. You need land for that. And that is a very important crop, and we'll have to produce it on the land. But the big thing is how to produce indeed food in a novel way. So if you think of a city as something producing pee and poo and producing actually the leftovers of salads, you can grow all of a sudden insects you can eat, and you can grow things artificially. And if you start thinking like this, you can raise pigs and laying hens in a city, living off our, well, not spoiled, but leftovers from human food. The big issue in that case becomes energy. Do we have the energy to recycle nutrients from our poo and pee and from the leftovers of biomass? Do we have the energy to produce it in a city? And I think the big question there is, do we have this energy? Because if you think of proteins being produced in RVS tanks, that is something we think to be the future. Why shouldn't that be done in cities, in big cities? It's very logical to have it to have them produced, distributed in a big city. So actually, the something that replaces cows and pigs and chickens, if that is being produced by bacteria or insects, that is something you can produce in a city. But the big condition is, do we have the energy? And that is where there is the big divide. the sun produces lots of energy, but can we harvest it? Because harvesting energy means you need lithium, you need cobalt, you need copper, you need gold, etc., etc., etc. And in the end, the energy returns on energy invested may be negative, and that is what, well, thinkers I sympathize with state. So the big question is, do we have the energy? And that is a question I'd like to put to the two of you and to Daniel in particular.
Daniel, on the response, indeed, the question is at the center of the debate, I believe, at which I think we'll go into more detail in the later part, specifically on that. So maybe also let's see what if our participant today agree with you on this poll question to.
And actually, what I just said is you can grow vegetables and protein, modern protein in a city, but you can't grow wheat.
That's right. Anushka, can we see the poll result? Oh, actually, we have quite a people disagree with the statement. So quite agree. Yeah, majority are quite neutral or positive about the contribution of vertical farms to cities and food systems, which is a bit surprising. It's good
that is
to
a
know.
result of modern technology and believing in modern technology.
Yes.
If there is energy.
If there's a question that whether it's even question, is energy a scarcity?
Yeah. Right. And well, so far, as far as our knowledge goes today, it is scarce. Sure.
Yes. Except yesterday, if you noticed, if you are in have a certain contract in the Netherlands, we could have you would have paid nothing for the energy last 2 days because there was too much green energy from the wind at this time of the year. So even whether energy is scarce, it's also can be a depends on issue.
I'm tempted to start a debate right now, but you need to. Okay. You need to store it, and that is where the tricky part begins again. Do we have, et cetera, do we have the batteries, et cetera, et cetera. So it makes it so difficult. There is a lot of energy, but can we make it useful for our purposes? That is always the big question.
Yes, we have Peter actually, before he has to step up, he has asked the question. I don't know if Peter, or he just left, but we could address later to Daniel, the question he asked about the MIT, but we can address it later. So Daniel, I'd like to invite you to start your continued presentation, but then also addressing some of the issues we raised here about the role of vertical farming in the bigger picture of our societal challenges in energy, in cities, and what exactly, is it just a box producing greens or was it more? Please go ahead, you can share a screen.
I mean, second part of my presentation is again, but we can directly relate that to the discussion because there are some things which actually are interesting for the debate, because there have been some things what I've heard, what I don't agree. But there is one thing what I actually would like to highlight again in why it is clever to think about how to radically increase urban food production, namely food produced on an already sealed surface. So there is around 1 to 1.5% of the whole landmass, which is already sealed, based on the studies, but plus minus it's that, So it comes into soil erosion, deforestation, and then all the issues created by water runoffs. Everybody knows the tragic situation of the Lake Aral, which of course it's also related to climate change, but also for agricultural use of water. And one of the key advantages of vertical farming or urban farming still is if we develop systems, or if we don't have to develop them because they are emerging like hell since 2009, we have to acknowledge that, independent from weather conditions, producing it 365 days a year, radically reducing the footprint, with all the potential what we have, if the vertical farm as a building typology is a structural element of the urban system, then of course intrinsically we also have the possibility to close water cycles, and with that also water and matter cycles, so water and energy cycles, which radically reduces the macronutrients what we need, what we know from reference projects that all these hydrocarbon based products like herbicides, pesticides, fungicides go down. If we think about different cities, for instance, in China and so on, China, for instance, only has 9% of its land which is usable for agriculture. So you're disbursing also this potential geopolitical conflict, this import and export balance. And of course, yes, we need energy, and this is a topic what I really would like to intensify by the end of the presentation, but not necessarily hydrocarbon energy. So this is something what we actually have to acknowledge. I already said it, if we are doing it in the wrong way, then the energy consumption will explode on one side, and by doing it in the wrong way, then of course we also have to think about how to store the energy and whatnot. I just would like to give you a quick overview, which is related to this, the poll, what we had on the very beginning. Standard question is always, what is the land, what is actually in use, and how much actually is left? Do we have enough land to feed 10 billion people, which we will be in 2075 if the UN is right? So we have the Antarctica, inland water, other land, forests, pastures, and the rest is in agricultural use. In other words, a part is too cold, too steep, too dry, has bad soil conditions, and the rest, and these are the good news, is suitable for agriculture. The disadvantage is that the rest of that surface is under the forests. So long story short, biocapacity of the earth is around 30% of the land mass, but for the agricultural use, it's 32 million square kilometers. Now I'm not talking about soil erosion, I'm not talking about desertification, etc. This is the status quo of the situation. This of course has to do with our food supply, with our food items. So every country has a specific range in that what is actually consumed, but it's not just the land, it's not just the fertile soil, which is leading to these 2,300 square meters if we are talking about the Central European, but it's also related to the rate of technologization. Just to give you an example, for instance, an Italian eats more than 100% more fruit than a Chinese. But this is the actual situation. Deforestation, in the center of it you see Vienna as a scaling factor. Here we are using a lot of rock water, 50,000-year-old rock water. This is the biggest greenhouse. I call it the biggest greenhouse, which is used in the south of Almeria in Spain. So this plastic sea, and these are some desperate agricultural practices next to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and all these clear tiny little dots. What you actually see here is they already consumed this 15,000-year-old rock water within 20 and 25 years. This means for the city to sense that, you could say every square meter of city needs 10 square meters of agricultural land. This is Vienna, so a whole part, the whole Burgenland actually would be the arable land for Vienna. And if you are honest, then you have to calculate that area too, which is the global footprint. This is not a Viennese phenomenon, of course. Here you see the comparison of London and to Vienna, similar situation. So that means London needs the size of Sweden to feed their citizens a whole year. Energy-wise, we already have been very good within the last 100 years. So in the 20th century, the world population increased by 300%, and the cultivation area just doubled. And this is because of the energy subsidies. So actually, this dependency of hydrocarbon energy or the use of hydrocarbon energy in conventional farming increased by 8,500%. Good news again, 1.5 people have been fed with 1 hectare in 1900, and 100 years later it's already. Global food supply chain, talked about that already, which is also directly dependent of cheap and abundant oil and gas. And if we have a closer look on the situation on until the farm gate, you see the macronutrients, there is a huge part of it, which 7 exajoule. Exajoule, just to get a feeling, an exa is a number with 18 zeros. This is the status quo of it. Of course, it's not just about production, but it's also related to transport and distribution and to processing. And if it comes into urban farming or vertical farming, you could say you are addressing the amount of energy of agricultural production, transportation, distribution and processing, and a part of it, of course, retail. By the end of the day, we have to cook the food. This is something that we can't address. So what could be the alternative strategies to conclude that? We could increase the yield per hectare, but what we know today is that most of the crops already have reached their production peak. So there is not a chance to radically increase the yield per hectare anymore. And in addition, with that system, what we actually have, it would theoretically lead also to doubling the dependency of the energy consumption. The other strategy, this is an ongoing process. We have seen that already earlier. Land conversion, through to our slash and burn practices. And if we take that number seriously, what we've seen in the diagram before, namely activating the suitable and very suitable areas under the forests and activate them for food production, that would release around 900 gigatons of CO2, which is 20 times, 30 times more than we are actually releasing per year. And the last thing, and that would be the solution to everything, I would say, if we would have a world government and they would decide to radically to eliminate these indirect consumed calories, namely meat and dairy products, then we would have solved the problem and we could stop talking about urban farming or vertical farming. But this is against every trend, I would say. And I just remember several years ago where the Green parties in Germany just made a proposal for 1 meat-free day per week. They didn't get re-elected a month later. That was the perspective on the current situation in world agriculture so far. Tiffany? I don't hear you.
Tiffany, you're muted.
Sorry, now it's good. Yeah, so thanks for recapping that question we started earlier, indeed, to placing the vertical farm in the context of the bigger issues. Because we do hear often when people say, we have enough agriculture areas, even in China, in a grand picture, not, but people tend to think that we have more land available than in aggregate. So, of course, there's a lot of challenges to realizing the concept, and energy, we already repeated several times. So we would like to ask you to really go into the discussion. So how does Vertical Farm in practice, as Vertical Farm Institute, to solve this issue of energy efficiency? What are the biggest challenges? So we can ask our third poll question, the last one, to introduce our session, is what exactly is the biggest fundamental constraint to the CEA, which stands for Control Environment Agriculture, or the vertical farming industry? So you have to choose one. They can already see the number 2, the high consumption of scarce energy. The 2 issues, a lot of energy need to consume, and if they are from scarce resources. Technology education, or urban planning and policy. So, Daniel, what is your answer to this question? If you have to choose one biggest constraint?
It was the fourth item. Yeah, it's about we can't solve the problem alone. Easiest step. Yeah, we need strong, convinced partners, and this is not just the challenge of urban farming or of vertical farming. So we have that debate or that discussion on all the levels, all the structural entities of our society so far. Yeah. We know that we are dependent from hydrocarbon energy, and we have to switch that energy. We have to change that energy system. Yeah, it's too late to be a pessimist. We know that for decades now, but it's getting these discussions are getting more intense. Yeah, and basically, it's an energy issue. Yes, if you want, yeah. I'm still struggling with that because from my point of view, and we already had that discussion. Yeah, it's I don't see the energy issue. In 54 minutes, we get the same amount of energy from free, yeah, from the sun. What we are consuming within 8,760 hours. So namely in 1 hour. Yeah. So, on the other side, when I'm just talking about an urban development area, yeah, the city is constantly growing, so that means we not just needing infrastructure, a canal system, and some streets, but new energy systems have to be implemented. And we have geothermal possibilities, wind energy, sun energy, Venturi turbines if it's next to the river. By the way, most of the cities are next to a river, and all these things have to be reactivated again. I say again because we already use that energy. Yeah? This is important in the overall development, and some people need to address that too. And these are political decisions on one side because it's not a technological issue. We know how to produce energy. We know how to store energy. Yeah, of course, in a limited way. So if we really have to store all the energy what we are producing today, then we have an issue. But we have to further develop that. Yeah. So
Yes.
long story short, I don't see the energy issue. I see the issue in finding the right partners and or stakeholders, and I mean that on different levels. Yeah, we need the political will, we need the cooperation of the developer or the building owner, and we need the right operators for them. And these different interests and these different potentials or possibilities we have to bring together. By the way, which is still painful for me, but 2 years ago, we have lost a project because we failed on an administrative level. So also we need these people also on board, yeah, from the municipalities, yeah. These things can happen, yeah. If you are working together with people which perhaps are not courageous enough, then of course, yeah, it will remain a dream. But on the other side, we have a lot of good examples worldwide where we see, yeah, okay, this can function and this can work if the right people are working together.
That's it's just actually sorry, it's a theme that repeated in our other sessions when we talk about the, for example, the traceability or transparency of the agri-food chain. And what comes down to it is not the limitation in technology, but rather the collaboration between people. So oftentimes we hear other companies struggling or have to deal with that question. But let's see what if our audience agree with this, your observation that energy is really not the issue, especially we are at the historical turning point of really rethink that. Oh, okay. 50-50. So, but still, more people do think the biggest issue is the high consumption of scarce energy. So I invite you to continue your presentation into actually go into detail of how Vertical Farmers Institute is using tools and digital tools to help address the issue of the energy question, which is still at the center of the debate. Okay.
Work? Can you see it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. Go ahead.
The screen is somehow changed. Yeah. Okay, one of the key instruments what we are using and how we are facing the complexity of that is our internal, we call it the digital twin, which is actually a software which is getting in use on the very, very beginning of a design process, on a very conceptual stage, where we actually are working with a very specific climate data, what we get, and we are bringing different information together, which have to do, okay, which crops have been used, which cultivation and production methods get adapted, which energy sources get used, etc., etc. Where we, on the very beginning, are getting very specific answers to what is the land use, what is the energy consumption, what is capex investment. So it's a tool actually addressing or hiding the whole complexity and accelerating these stop and go decisions from developers. Yeah. Behind that, there is a graphic algorithm which is actually between our 3D software, where we actually we are setting up the urban model, placing the vertical farm in the center, and that volume is directly related, directly connected to Energy Plus and to Radiance. So all the thermal simulation can be done, and of course the daylight availability, and by the end of the day the power demand. Coming back to that slide, what you have already seen, this tool also helps you to think about, first of all, what could be produced on a decent level. Decent, I mean, in terms of energy consumption. So are you heading for high energy requiring tomatoes? Are you producing tomatoes, strawberries, lettuces, herbs, and whatnot? All have a different energy requirement. Then there are a lot of potential production entities or food items which require way less energy, like mushrooms, insects, and fish. And by the end of the day, also cell-based meat production. So everything is connected in terms of the outdoor climate. So where we immediately see what is the energy potential, and by energy potential I also mean which part of the buildings could be directly activated for energy production. On the other side, we get specific information about the already existing indoor climate when it comes into building refurbishment. Yeah, where you could translate that picture of climate zones, what we know from the Earth, into a building. There are some parts which are colder with less daylight, or warmer with more daylight, etc. And these, of course, have to fit to some degree with the growth conditions or the energetic requirements of the food items. And the earlier you understand this interconnection, the lower, of course, the energy consumption is. Yeah? This model is the same and can be translated to the analysis of different production methods. What we see here is we have sealed containers on the back side. We have a conventional, or the idea of a conventional greenhouse on the very rooftop, and we have the carousel system, what perhaps you know from Vertical Harvest in Jackson, Wyoming. So with this 4D simulation, you come to on a very early stage to specific energy requirements, and of course to the same to the right light recipe and the investment cost of additional placement of the lighting fixtures. So, and these cultivation production methods could be then placed on different parts of the building, and you see the different variations. And then, of course, you can choose the optimum. Yeah. And this is always contextualized with reference projects, what we simulated. So other vertical farms which have been placed. So I have a good orientation in whether, again, I'm talking about the very early stage of the conceptual phase, yeah, where you still have then a lot of time to further optimize it. On a bigger scale, I'm talking about that building mass again in Berlin, yeah, where you actually see, okay, this is the volume. This is defined by the investor and the municipality in Berlin. and you on the very early stage, you see what impact it actually has in terms of energy consumption if you place your vertical farm on specific parts of the building. Yeah, and then by the end of the day, you come up with a definition, so that what is transparent or white here is conventional program, and the rest will be activated for food production. Important also for the developer. Now that we defined what gets produced, you come up with specific numbers. So how much square meter you need for the vertical farm, so how much for production, for processing, for cooling, storage, HVAC system, etc. And what is the additional function which is needed or defined by the client. Like, for instance, in this case, it was the educational hub or food-related additionals like gastronomy, show kitchen, store, and event space. This also can be used for set up. That was a project in the south of Vienna where we our goal actually was to bring all the different production methods, what we know so far, together in one urban development area, from outdoor cultivation, organic farming, conventional agriculture, year-round urban farming, and high-tech controlled environment agriculture. This, of course, combined with semi-public and public spaces, and the program arrangement is arranged in that way that enables also this possibility of using synergy potentials, like, for instance, using the accesses, heat for the greenhouse, for event spaces, etc. The other example, also mentioned it already on the very beginning, which is that the building refurbishment, where we came up with the idea in why tearing that investors program project down and rebuilding it to meet the new energy standards, why not keeping it as it is, analyzing the actual potential and activating specific spaces for food production. Here, what you see here is the solar radiation potential and the mix of the building envelope. Then a part of it will be used for energy production, and the rest, which actually is needed for the crop in terms of photosynthetic photon flux density or the overall daylight integral, which is going through the translucent or transparent building. Part of that building then showed us, okay, this space is perhaps not enough to set up a building, a business model, but in this case, the decision have been set up that let's combine this idea of indoor food production with gastronomy. So you're actually creating a semi-public space for sensitizing the people of indoor food production. So the complexity is given, we know that already. So there are a lot of decisions which actually have to be taken into account. What is the right production method? Which building services should be used? Is heated, ventilated, or air conditioning, or is naturally ventilation, especially when it comes into lighting? This is also important because it's also directly related to the energy consumption. Is it totally covered? So is it really independent from daylight? Or are we working with supplemental light, or is it just naturally lit, which is, of course, also possible in most of the region worldwide. And by the end of the day, the cultivation method, which gets used. Yeah. To conclude, one discussion which is interesting is always, we know what is possible. The state of research is enough. The rate of technologization is here. If we combine that with the economic perspective and also in connection to the sustainable energy goals, then I'm actually convinced to really come up with a solution which is sustainable in the long term. This picture, what you see here, is real pioneers' work. This is a picture of Fertigator in 1974. That was one of the first vertical farms ever built in the south of Vienna, no longer in use. But this really, this is one of the projects which is very close to my heart, because this is actually real pioneers' work, because that was in a time where we still didn't know how photosynthesis is actually working. To conclude, when it comes into energy performance of a building, we have to accept the energy what is actually given. So understanding the energy potential and the resulting indoor climate, which then leads to the right building performance. And since the vertical farm, as we define it, is a structural element of the urban system, then the aesthetics is directly related, of course, to societal acceptance. Artificial intelligence perhaps could support us in that way, especially when it comes to predictive maintenance. We have a lot of scenarios in how climate change will develop, but I think there is still a lot to think about in how to integrate these unpredictable situations, perhaps when it comes into microclimate, heat island effects, etc. I would like to thank you, by the way, and to conclude with an invitation to GreenTech, where we appear together with FarmTech Society and with our booth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. So also like to invite Dick. We already addressed a number of debate issues. I would like to also ask for your comments on the questions we discussed earlier. And what do you see that how do we bring this concept or as a integral approach in positioned with the bigger context of the transition topic we are all needing to address, climate change. In fact, as you are in the middle of the debate in the Netherlands about this nitrogen crisis, I think you already see the conflict between land use, environment, and also agriculture activities. So is there something we can learn on these issues and bring, let's say, reposition vertical farming, not as a, let's say, elitist approach, just for fancy salad, but rather as a kind of approach really to solve some of the issues we're addressing?
Yes. Well, we'll need to. Actually, today, ABN AMRO had a report out stating that climate change urges us to change agriculture. The European Central Bank said that inflation will continue to be there because there are disturbances of the food chain, because it's a global system, and that global system will be disrupted all the time. So let me be a little bit more positive. I've been talking about energy. We can have our reservations, but you need to get started. I made a presentation the other day for an international audience of young people, and I said, I'm like Desmond Tutu, a prisoner of hope. And Daniel said, it's too late to be a pessimist. So indeed, you need to start, but you can't start just thinking that you'll get there, but you'll have to start, and you'll have to start doing something. So a system that is circular on its own, that is precise, that doesn't waste nitrogen, doesn't waste water, doesn't waste phosphates, etc., that obviously is a thing to fight global systems that are being disturbed all the time, and they will be disturbed for the decades to come. So this is a way to fight that, and it deserves all the experiments to do so, yet bearing in mind that we may not have sufficient energy. So let's be parsimonious with energy, and let's try to combine low and high tech doing so. So that would be my first comment. But the other thing that is so very important is to have sustainable systems in their own, in a region. And that is where the concept of a city comes in. If indeed we evolve, food production evolves to something that is technical, and that is what it is in this concept, then you should conceive of it in a distributed way that disconnect itself from this whole big system by making it more resilient. So that would be my positive stance towards this. So we need to experiment and do it. And I'm very curious to learn from people who are here what they think.
Yes. So we have a small audience, closed setting. So I also would encourage everyone to just open up your microphone and camera so we can see you and say hi. And then also share what you're doing in this field or related. And what is your take on this current debate that surrounding this topic of high-tech growing technology, energy transition, and all? I see Core already switched on, so I'll start with Core. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Cor Holtakkers. I'm living in the Netherlands in Amersfoort, and I do have a shop with regional food and a restaurant with regional food. And I'm also involved in several local and regional food projects. I think my question is, I believe in vertical farming and think it's necessary to pay attention to it, to be a part of the contribution to a food transition which we need. But apart from the energy thing, which is obviously very high, needs a high input, I think what can we do with the traditional agricultural farming? How can we involve the traditional agricultural farming into vertical farming? They do have a lot of knowledge. Can we incorporate them to be partner in this food transition?
Thanks, Cor. Good to know you. I'm also living in Amersfoort, so I'd like to know where I can find you for the local food restaurant. So Daniel and Dick, again, I think there's questions. I welcome both of you to comment.
Yeah, it's a question of definition. Yeah, we work together with an aquaponic guy, who now gets retired, who actually told me that the last aquaponic plants what he developed was actually for farmers. Yeah, so it's where he actually experienced so the moment when they understand that this is a possibility to increase their earnings and they have the possibility to work on that year round, then they start getting interested. Yeah, on one side. Yeah, on the other side, just experienced by hearing. Yeah, in most of the cases, though, there is an issue with mindset. Yeah, the moment when they actually have an indoor farm or they think about a container farm and whatnot, I think this is an entrepreneurial thing, and there are a lot of farmers, and I'm not talking about the big ones, yeah, the industrial ones. They don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. Yeah, there is a difference between being a farmer and an entrepreneur. Yeah. And some of them, of course, are also scared about the level of technology, which, from my point of view, I don't understand, because most of agriculture is also, if not high tech, but mid tech.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is what I think as well. So, Corey, you're asking, can you integrate traditional farmers in this high or mid tech concept? I think there are two big paradigms: industrial farming and small scale farming. And this is something else. This is distributed processing, I think. So it is not like industrial farming. It is a way of distributed food production, but it's being industrialized, and yet it has meaning because it is local. You need to understand what it is about. So we have this question: can you grow your vegetables without nutrients? Peter Hundeken said they just grow on water. Well, farmers don't believe that because they know that you need the nutrients. It's not water, you add something to it. And that is where they come in. And I think that is where, if they have technology, they can use that technology to be as parsimonious, to work as parsimoniously as can be done. And that is where the knowledge of traditional farmers comes in, because they understand the biology of the whole thing. The biology doesn't change, but they have to change indeed their attitude, because they don't grow it. They don't grow it in soils, but they'll grow it differently. So that is where a mind shift is indeed needed. But I think they can be integrated, and actually they are needed, because we don't need all kinds of strange fantasies that things grow just by their own. That is simply not true. And that is what farmers really know. They understand energy and they understand nutrients, two key components to this thing.
Yeah.
To add to that discussion, I'd like to invite from the audience. I recognize some people I know from Hamza Q. Hamza, you are from EcoBloom. If you are, and Nico Fraunhofer, you both are working in the area of technology or research for vertical farming. So if you are still with us, I'd like to invite you to share what you do, and also maybe respond to some or comment on, join the discussion. Let's see if Hamza and Nico are still here, or they are switched off.
No, I'm here. Sorry.
Good. Go ahead.
I missed the last part. Could you please repeat the question?
Well, welcome to maybe Hamza to join us and tell us, you are working on basically optimizing the growing of making decisions. So responding to this question, we just discussed the role between traditional farmers and the new tech-driven farmers or entrepreneurs. And how do you see that? Maybe also tell us what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm one of the founders of EcoBloom. We're an agri-tech startup based in Stockholm, and work with indoor farmers, so the CA industry, and have been for quite a while. And our focus is on, to your point, optimizing the food production process by offering what we call EcoSense. And it's an intelligent crop monitoring system, which consists of environmental climate sensors that measure the air and water quality, the most critical values in both air and water, and then using multispectral imaging and image analysis, we can study plant growth and maturity in real time, as well as photosynthetic activity. So we study the farm's performance in real time and make intelligent predictions about the expected outcome. And the two main legs, so to speak, is by studying stress levels, as well as the growth and maturity degree of plants. And essentially creating a digital copy of the farm, and where users and growers are able to monitor their food production process remotely through our analytics dashboard, helping them and acting as somewhat of a decision support system, giving them a deeper insight about the food production process, as well as intelligent predictions about the expected outcome, and obviously much more complicated than that, but like offering notification systems. So everything is analyzed by the algorithms, and whenever there's an issue that occurs, whether it's a deviation of some sort, decline in growth rate or increase in stress levels, then the system notifies the farmer and tells him or her about the issues at hand, what has happened, where and when it happened, to really optimize the growth cycle, minimize it, the number of growth and the days, as well as some of our successful cases or case studies with some farmers is in reduction in energy costs. So we've managed to reduce energy consumption by up to 25% as a result of optimizing for the period and the environment that the plants grow in, increasing yield by up to between 15 and 20%. So there are a lot of things we've managed to do, and again, this shows the importance of adopting technology, because at some point, to become profitable, you need to scale, and when you need to scale, you also need to automate and digitize certain parts of your food production processes. So it's and of course the data. The data is crucial. You need to understand what the data means and how to use it and translate that into actionable insights, and that's what the system does. I don't hear you. Sorry, Tiffany. I don't know if it's
sorry. Yeah. How do you look at a question of this integrating with traditional farmers, let's say land-based farmers? Do you work with them now, or do you still say now the urban farm industry is really a different industry, the tech-driven young people who has no green fingers, and you still need to incorporate more of the traditional farmers into the area, into the sector?
I think that indoor farming and CEA in general will never replace. It's a complement, and it's a necessity. We have to grow more, and we have to grow more closer to consumers, and that's CEA offers that and helps solve those challenges. As a growing population, we need to produce more food, and we need to do so more sustainably and closer to the end user and consumers. So I think that's what CA offers, but still there's still many challenges that we experience within the CA industry, and especially in times like these where energy is a big hot topic today. How to optimize energy consumption, and so in our case we mainly work with indoor farms because of the nature of the solution that requires electricity, which might be slightly difficult in applying outdoors, but of course there are methods and ways of not doing exactly the same, but analyzing and applying, this aspect of image analysis. So we see satellite imagery, for example, or drones being used in outdoor conventional farming, and I think that's important regardless. And the industry we're in is quite conservative in the sense that farmers have been growing the same tomato for 60 plus years, and here we say, hey, use this and the AI will help you with X and Y, and they're like, no one can tell me how to grow my tomatoes. So I think of course there's a hurdle there as well that we need to overcome, and which of course is easier when we approach indoor farmers, because they're already
mindset
that the mindset is different, exactly, and they know that using artificial light, just that's also already a step into modernized agriculture.
Yes, thanks. Also, I think this connection between the complementarity between vertical farms and horticulture and traditional farming actually need to be better bridged, because
Absolutely.
Nobody is advocating that the vertical farm should become the only solution or replacing traditional farming. You need the exchange of knowledge and need a complementary, but there's still lots of connection and bridging is to be done. I'd like to also invite Nico, if he can join from his taxis in his car, but he was the chief horticulturist at Infarm, one of the biggest vertical farm venture, and now currently as a researcher at Fraunhofer Institute in Germany. Nico, if you can join, we can see if your connection is good enough from the car, for maybe just your voice then. Oh, doesn't work. Okay, but good that you can join us. A little introduction that the Fraunhofer Institute is researching on this technology on the water energy food nexus. So particularly looking at energy conversion and storage, nutrient recovery, and water treatment. So a lot of development in terms of technology are indeed happening in a lot of different corners of the world, from new energy systems, transition, renewable energy systems. So I think we are basically seeing a fundamental or needing a fundamental paradigm shift, how we look at infrastructure or energy from a very fundamental point of view. So that's actually back to the question whether energy is scarce. Maybe that's even a good starting point to think about our green transitioning. In fact, we need to go into renewable energy, which is not scarce, but the issue is that we are not having enough technology at scale to solve the challenges, which is not unsolvable. So I'd like to also ask any other comments. Interesting indeed. We would like to invite everybody to join us at GreenTech, which is over 2 weeks. So we have, if you're interested, please leave a note because we can give you a registration quote for free entrance. So welcome. We, together with Foodlog, we will be having several sessions, actually continuing the discussion, what we covered today in terms of vertical farming for not just the global south, the north, but also for meeting SDG goals and addressing, let's say, developing economies. Also, we'll be talking about more on the development of AI and digital development. So I hope to see all of you to join.
Thank you.
And so do I, because we absolutely need to talk about, so I may seem critical on energy, but we'll need to experiment. And what is very interesting is indeed in conflict zones like Ukraine, how to rebuild cities and how to make them circular, how to do the same thing in Africa. It's all very important. And that in that experiment, you can use, you can develop the technologies we need, and we need to find out how to operate them, as Hamza is saying. It's an industrial business, but yet you need the same kind of knowledge, but you apply it in a very different way, learning from the way the greens behave or the bacteria behave in a reactor container. Everything will have to find it out, how it works in practice.
Yes. So if there's no other questions, I would like to thank you, everybody. Oh, Daniel, go ahead.
Because this is very important to that discussion, because it somehow sounds this is also something which somehow has to emerge. Yeah, this energy production issue. I just would like to come back quickly to this Berlin project, where actually a developer, and in this case, it's true. Yeah, if you have a developer actually understanding, now this is my responsibility in thinking about where is the energy of the user coming from. Yeah, this is also a paradigm shift. Yeah, they set up an energy concept for these 100,000 square meters. Yeah, where they producing 150% more energy than they actually need. Yeah, and this is not rocket science. It's geothermal, it's PV, it's Venturi turbines, and it's wind. Just super hyper local renewable energy on site. This is important. Yeah, we are still in a situation where actually, because the developer doesn't pay the energy bill, but if he understands, if he sets up a new building where you, for instance, as a vertical farmer or as an operator, you will never get an energy bill.
Now that's
rent, yeah, and that's it.
And that's interesting. And that is what we have to learn from. Indeed.
What they also have to understand, and this is my last sentence, these are developers. Of course, they want to make money, yeah? And there might be, they might have found a solution where they actually say, okay, let's create something which is autarkic in terms of energy, and still they're making their revenue.
Yes, a fundamental rethinking about our business model, which is very necessary if we were to meet all the climate goals, solving all the conflict between land uses, that we need to think very differently and experiment. And that's what we are for. So thank you, everybody, for the contribution and discussion. And we'll see you at GreenTech or at the next Digital Food session. Have a good afternoon.